Greetings, friend. I'm Dr. Marianne, and this is a place where we have conversations about healing, higher consciousness, spirituality, and discovering that sometimes the greatest wisdom in our lives isn't found in the easy seasons. It's hidden inside the ones we would never choose. Today, I want to tell you about one of the most unexpected healing moments of my life. And it didn't happen in therapy. It didn't happen in meditation. It didn't happen during prayer. It happened while I was listening to my daughter Micah tell the story of her childhood on a podcast. Or what I thought would be the same story as my motherhood, because as I listened, I realized something. She and I weren't remembering the same story. For years, I remembered everything that went wrong. She was telling everything that went right. And somewhere between those two memories, I found healing I didn't even know I needed. Micah described our life as functionally dysfunctional. When I heard her say that, I laughed because it was probably the most accurate description I have ever heard. Our life wasn't neat, it wasn't predictable, and it definitely wasn't normal. There were seasons of homelessness, different houses, different schools, different father figures. There were days when I was simply trying to make it to live another day. There is one memory from that season that has stayed with me. I worked at the YMCA. Every day Micah went with me. The school bus would pick her up and drop her back off at the Y. There was a house nearby that was empty because it was being renovated. At night, we would quietly sleep there, and before the workers arrived in the morning, we'd leave. We would shower at the Y, put on clean clothes, and begin another day. When I tell people that now, they usually expect me to describe despair. But strangely, that's not what I remember most. I remember trying to make life feel normal for her. I remember keeping us busy, laughing when I could, finding little adventures in ordinary days, protecting her childhood the only way I knew how. I wasn't just trying to survive. I was trying to make sure she still got to be a little girl, because somewhere along the way, I had forgotten how to be one myself. There's something else I've realized recently, and if you're a parent of adult children, this may be for you. For 33 and 35 years, I have carried responsibility that was never actually mine to carry. Not responsibility for loving them, not responsibility for supporting them, not responsibility for being their mother. Those things will never end. But somewhere along the way, I also started carrying responsibility for their shadows, their pain, their healing, their decisions, their heartbreaks, their disappointments, their journey. Even if I realized I was doing it, I thought that's what good mothers did. We carry, we fix, we protect, we absorb, we blame ourselves. If they're struggling, surely I must have done something wrong. If they're hurting, oh my goodness, I should have prevented it. If they're still wrestling with old wounds, surely I should have healed them by now. But recently, I did something that was one of the most healing things I have ever done. I intentionally released myself from carrying my children's shadows. Not because I love them less, but because I finally realized their shadows don't belong to me. Their healing belongs to them, just like mine belongs to me. For years, I thought motherhood meant carrying everything. Now I believe motherhood is learning what to carry and what to lovingly place back into God's hands. Because if I keep carrying what belongs to my children, I'm unintentionally telling them I don't believe they're capable of carrying it themselves, and I'm keeping them from their life moments. That's not love. That's fear wearing love's clothing. Real love sometimes says, I believe in you enough to let you walk your own path, even when that path is painful, even when I wish I could protect you, even when every part of me wants to step in. Maybe that's another reason listening to Micah tell her story affected me so deeply. For the first time, I wasn't listening as the mother who thought she had failed. I was listening as a woman who finally understood. My job was never to create a perfect childhood. My job was to love her the best I knew how with the level of consciousness I had at the time. And then to trust that her soul would do the rest. Because every one of us has our own journey. Every one of us has our own lessons. Every one of us has our own healing. I couldn't live hers, just like no one could live mine. There are entire seasons of my life I don't remember very clearly. Survival has a way of doing that. When your nervous system is focused on getting through today, it isn't always carefully storing memories for tomorrow. I remembered the fear, the responsibility, the constant calculations. How are we going to pay for this? Where are we going to sleep? How do I keep going? Those were the memories I carried. But then I heard her tell our story. And she wasn't talking about bills. She wasn't talking about fear. She wasn't talking about instability. She talked about perspective. She remembered that I taught her nothing was happening to us. It was happening for us. She remembered me pointing out the good when it would have been much easier to focus on what was wrong. She remembered me telling her that when someone unexpectedly showed up to help us, they were one of our angels. She remembered that it takes a village to raise a child. And I sat there in awe. Is that really what she remembers? Because I had spent years remembering what I couldn't give her. She remembered what I did. I think parents spend far too much time believing our children are keeping score. We assume they're making a list of every mistake, every missed opportunity, every moment we weren't enough. Maybe they are, but maybe they're also remembering something else. Maybe they're remembering how we made them feel, how we loved. Maybe they're remembering how we got back up after life knocked us down. Maybe they're remembering that even though we didn't have everything, they never doubted they were loved. When Micah said that homelessness was harder on me than it was on her, I had to pause. I had never considered that because she wasn't carrying what I was carrying. She wasn't wondering how the bills would get paid. She wasn't carrying the weight of providing. She wasn't awake at 3 o'clock in the morning wondering how I was going to fix everything. She was watching me. Children borrow our interpretation of reality. They don't just hear what we say. They watch how we respond when life falls apart. They study our face when the future feels uncertain. They're learning whether this moment defines us or develops us. I couldn't always give my daughters certainty, but I could give them perspective. And perspective is a gift that keeps unfolding long after childhood ends. Listening to her also reminded me that we all do need a village. She remembered teachers, coaches, mentors, people who stepped into our lives for a season. Whenever someone helped us, I would tell her, that's one of your angels. Looking back, I think I needed to believe that just as much as she did, because it reminded me that we weren't alone. Sometimes the miracle isn't that our problems disappear. Sometimes the miracle is that someone shows up to help us carry them. And maybe purpose isn't always standing on a stage or changing the whole world. Maybe purpose is becoming someone's angel for one chapter of their story, long enough to help them believe in themselves, long enough to remind them they're not alone, long enough to help them keep going. There was another realization that surprised me. As I listened to her describe me, I realized I had spent my entire life trying to become the person little Marianne needed. I didn't know I was doing it. I wasn't thinking, one day I'll become that person. Life just kept placing me in situations where I had the opportunity to give away what I had once needed most. As a psychiatric nurse, I sat with frightened people because I knew what it felt like to need someone to stay. As an educator, I encouraged new nurses because I knew what it felt like to question yourself. As a mother, I tried to raise my daughter with hope because I knew what fear could do to a child. Maybe that's what so many of us are doing without even realizing it. We're becoming the person we were searching for all along. The truth is, there's no handbook for parenting. We're all making it up as we go. We're loving imperfectly, apologizing when we need to, praying we're getting more right than wrong, wondering if our children will spend years recovering from our mistakes. Every parent I know has laid awake wondering, was I enough? Did I do too much? Did I do too little? Will they remember my failures more than my love? If that's you, I want to tell you something my daughter unknowingly taught me. Children don't always remember what we think they're going to remember. Sometimes they remember our resilience. Sometimes they remember our laughter. Sometimes they remember the values we lived. Sometimes they remember the way we made them feel safe, even when we didn't feel safe ourselves. Sometimes they remember hope without realizing that was all we had in that moment. Maybe that's what healing really is. It isn't rewriting the past. It isn't pretending the hard things never happened. Sometimes healing doesn't happen while we're living the experience. Sometimes it happens 20 years later, when someone else tells your story, and you finally hear what they were receiving while you were busy worrying about what you couldn't give. Micah thought she was sharing her childhood. She had no idea. She was telling a story I could never tell myself. For years, the story I told myself was one of survival. A story of everything I wish I could have done differently, everything I couldn't provide, every mistake I replayed, every burden I quietly carried as a mother. But she told a different story. She reminded me that while I was busy measuring my failures, she was quietly absorbing my values. While I was grieving what we lacked, she was remembering what we had. She remembered hope. She remembered perspective. She remembered the angels. She remembered that even in the hardest seasons, I taught her to believe that life wasn't happening to us, it was happening for us. She reminded me that children don't always remember our perfections as much as they remember our presence. They don't always remember the weight we carried. They remember how we made them feel. She gave me permission to stop measuring myself by everything I lacked and begin seeing myself through eyes no longer clouded by guilt. She reminded me that love leaves a deeper imprint than hardship. Because of this, I no longer judge the younger version of me by the wisdom I have today. She made the best decisions she could with the consciousness she had then. And today, I choose to thank her instead of condemn her. And maybe, just maybe, the story you've been telling yourself about your own life isn't the whole story either. So today, instead of asking yourself, where did I fall short? Try asking, what did I pass on that I can't even see yet? Because the people we love are often carrying gifts we don't even realize we gave them. Micah thought she was sharing her childhood. She had no idea she was giving me a new way to remember my motherhood. And maybe that's what we all need from time to time. Someone to help us see ourselves with more grace than we've been willing to give ourselves. So friend, maybe the story you've been telling yourself about your own life isn't the whole story at all. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You are probably leaving behind far more love than you can see. And that, too, is part of your legacy. Thank you for being here with me today. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one lesson someone gave you that became part of who you are, even if they never realized they were teaching it? Blessings.